Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio.
Welcome to another edition of Feminists Around the World. And today we want to celebrate the amazing activist and icon, Miss Major Griffin-Gracy. And I actually had to take a minute and go through our files and our old stuff because I thought it was like maybe we've talked about her. I bet she's been mentioned before because she's pretty iconic in the U.S. And continues to be someone that we look at as a pioneer when it comes to activism within the trans community, the queer community, as well as for those who have been affected by the HIV/AIDS epidemic. So for a lot of us in the U.S., she is a familiar name. I will say I didn't know too much about her, but I do know kind of about her. And I thought, you know what? We need to talk. We need to talk more about her. Let's dedicate at least 10 minutes. And y'all, I know that sounds shameful and we should go more into it, but we do want to talk about her accomplishments and the things that she has contributed, especially during a time that feels so dark, as we've talked about previously. And you know, we just want to keep highlighting those who've done so much work already and continue to show how to fight for the rights for everyone. So let's start. Ready? Are you ready, Anney?
All right. Yeah.
So Miss Major, as many people know her, is a leader in the trans community and has been actively working for the rights of trans people with her own experiences in transitioning and having to fight the prejudice and persecution she faced growing up. So Griffin-Gracy has been involved in the drag ballroom world since she was very young, starting in Chicago, where she was from. As in fact, in her teens, she was coming along and figuring out her identity. And she met a performer, I believe her name was Miss Kitty, who helped her learn how to dress up and how to wear makeup and really taught her how to be herself.
Right. And her journey of finding her true self was not an easy one. During a time when being transgender was not spoken about or understood at all, she was able to learn to love herself and who she really was. Of course, because of those difficult times, she had to hide in public and tried to keep it private due to the fear of ridicule and persecution, even being expelled from college after being exposed for having and wearing dresses in private. In an interview with Raquel Willis for Them, she said, "At that point, it was, as it is now, a matter of survival. It's interesting to think about when I was younger, the constraints and the way I had to negotiate through in order to maintain breathing every day. It becomes a matter of standing up for who we know we are. It's not that we believe we're this or that. We know that's who we are. When the dust settles, I want my trans girls and guys to stand up and say, I'm still here." But that didn't discourage her, all of these obstacles from being her true self. She soon moved to New York from Chicago in 1962 and was able to find a small community where she was welcomed and felt safe. But outside of that small community, it was not the case. She was regular at the now famous Stonewall Inn and was part of the Stonewall Uprising, also known as the Stonewall Riots, in 1969.
Right. I believe she's one of the last people from that riot still alive today, really who had actively been a part of it and still is able to relate to us what happened during that time. And that's in fact, while being interviewed for Outwards, she spoke about her memories of that time. And she spoke about how they had been protecting each other before the riots even happened. She said, in the beginning, it was just looking out for two of the girls that were close to our little circle. Then our circle expanded when we noticed that one of the girls we used to see all the time suddenly just disappeared. We read about her in the paper like, oh my God, she was killed. We need to really watch ourselves. Then it got bigger. Then as time progressed, boys started coming over from New Jersey, 4 or 5 in a car, high off of beer and stuff, and throwing full beer cans at the girls as they would drive down the street. We started figuring out how to fight back. Cursing them out would do no good because they were going to keep driving. We figured out a way to stop that car and that they would get out. We would physically fight them. It was time to kick their and then send them home. And then speaking with KATV, which is a local station in Kansas, she talked about the beginning of the riots. She said, what sparked the riot is we were sick and tired of being pushed around by the police And we decided that we were not going to take it anymore. They would come in with the clubs and knock their sticks on the wood, and everyone would separate. We were just tired of it. Stonewall was the only bar we could go to and the only bar that accepted us. When we went there, we expected to relax, and that's the furthest thing that happened. It just wasn't. So we decided to stand up to them and defy their order.
And she spoke about the horrors of that time and reliving the memories, saying, quote, "That's not a party place anymore for me. It's like going to a morgue. I don't want to dance in a morgue. The memories there are not pleasant. It's like, oh, someone threw a shoe. How do you know? You weren't there. You're 23. Oh, no, they threw a brick. Right. Okay, I was there. I don't remember a shoe, a brick, a bottle, a body, a garbage can. I don't remember All I know is we were fighting for our life and we were kicking the cops. I made sure they knocked me out so they wouldn't break every bone in my body and drag me off. It's not a fun thing. It's just not a fun thing." After the incident, Griffin-Gracy had several other incidents which resulted in arrest, including allegedly robbery of clients, also wearing makeup and going to lewd places such as illegal gay and trans clubs. It was during her time in lockup. She met Frank Smith at the Attica Correctional Facility, and Smith had participated in the 1971 riots. In that facility, they became friends throughout her sentence, and he was not only a friend to Griffin-Gracy, but taught her a lot about political activism within the criminal justice system and equality and rights for the Black community. Here's a quote from her interview with Advocate.com about her time in the detention center. "There was a prison and a mental institution, and they put me in the mental institution first. That was hard because they stripped me down in front of everybody and made me walk to places naked. So I became aware of what was going on. And then they had the Attica prison riots and brought some of those guys and put them in the same cell block I was in the hole. And I got to talk to them and learn what the differences were and that everybody suffered in there. I learned not to take it on as if I was the only one that it had happened to. It happened to all of us. I then realized what I had to do. I had to do something to keep the girls safe in there."
Right. And after being released from incarceration, she moved to San Diego in 1978 and began organizing and working with grassroots movements within the community. She began working with food banks and then moved on to working in direct service. And it was during the time working in San Diego that she had to confront those who were diagnosed with AIDS, which had become an epidemic in the U.S. at the time. And also she has been during that time working with people who were in prison and making sure the justice system was working and advocating for the trans people in the prison as well.
Right. She soon moved to the San Francisco Bay Area in the mid-90s to work with those affected by HIV/AIDS, and even served as an advocate and educator at the Tenderloin AIDS Research Center, or TARC. But she soon realized that many of the transgender community were uncomfortable coming into centers, and she began going out to provide assistance and eventually started street clinics to educate the community. In 2004, Griffin-Gracy joined the Transgender Gender Intersex Justice Project, an organization that advocates for gender people who are in prison. She remained in the organization in leadership roles, including being the executive director until 2015.
Right. And she's been busy since then. She actually filmed a documentary called A Major exclamation point in 2015, which got a lot of acclaims. She created House of Gigi, which is an organization, quote, founded and led by transgender and gender nonconforming people and our allies. We create safe and transformative spaces where members of our community can heal physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually from the trauma arising from generations of transphobia, racism, sexism, poverty, ableism, and violence, and nurture them into tomorrow's leaders. And we currently primarily focus on supporting and nurturing the leadership of transgender women of color living in the U.S. South, which is an incredible organization, and you can go look it up. She is still as the founder, I believe, and they do a lot of work, which is part her passion. Of course, they've become more intersectional, and she has become a huge intersectional feminist since then, talking about the needs to actually protect all the people in the South, especially those of color. So definitely something to look for. She's also executive produced documentaries such as Trans in Trumpland is exactly what you think. And she's been mentoring and advocating for trans youth all over the world and within her own community. And when asked by Willis in that same interview if Griffin-Gracy had any advice for young activists, she said, We have a right to be angry, but you have to be angry in degrees. You use your anger to come up with ways to dismantle the bullshit that is oppressing you in the first place. There has to be a way to manage this so you accomplish the goals you set out for yourself. It's not an easy thing, but you must nurture, take care of, and look out for yourself too. If you don't take the time to heal your wounds and soothe your ills, you cannot be of any benefit to anybody else. I think that's very important to remember. So yeah, if you look her up, she has done some amazing things. She definitely has different websites, and she has a lot of that documentary we talked about, and has been on different podcasts. So you should definitely look her up if you don't know about her.
Yes. And as always, if there is someone you think we should highlight in this segment, please let us know. You can email us at stephanieandmomstuff@iheartmedia.com. You can find us on Twitter at momstuffpodcast, or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff Mom Never Told You. You can also find us on YouTube. We also have a book you can pre-order at stuffyoushouldreadbooks.com. Yes, yay, indeed. Thanks as always to our super producer Christina, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you all.
Yes, and thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.